back to Lloyd.
So finally, I have an enthusiastic speaker on the topic of the investment side of this whole equation and the economic opportunity that it represents. So, Tom Lloyd.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see some my old friends from CFEDC. I do think the K3 EDC should be noted, while it's a separate organization, it's very, very much aligned, I think, with the Cape Fear Future Initiative, as well as the National Win the Future Initiative of the President, which was announced at the beginning of the year, which really was broken into, out-educate and out-innovate and out-build the rest of the world. And in that, GE CEO, Mr. Jeff Immelt, he's the chairman now of the United States Council on Jobs and Competitiveness. And one of the things that CFEDC has been able to do is focus attention on really a lot of what I call now the mainstream best practices in economic development, which is targeting high growth industries with manufacturing sectors that are high value and actually putting us in the best position to be relevant and competitive in the 21st century for the sake of our citizens and our kids and everything else. And one of the things about Cleantech certainly is the tremendous opportunity that we've heard about tonight, the extraordinary risk we face if we don't, as a nation, get our act together and execute. And I think you'll see, as you hear about where China is and where Germany is and where, as movements are happening all around the world at a geopolitical level and economic level, this is a really big deal. And having a topic that shows having a session on it for Wilmington is really cool. So I want to talk about purely from an economic point of view, and the first idea is introducing the notion of Wilmington as a clean tech industry cluster, economic cluster for clean tech industry. A lot of people say, well, why would Wilmington be a good place to do that? And I always think, well, why not? There's no legitimate reason why it shouldn't be, and I'll get into that a little bit. So, a whole point of economic development strategically is to ensure future prosperity of the region and to position today and not wait to do the right thing. We want to target high growth, high value businesses because they're most likely to give us those kind of, I think they use the word sustainable jobs, meaning not jobs that construct something that's irrelevant in 2 years, but actually an industry that has a promising 2, 3, 4 decade run ahead of it, much like information technology was when I came out of graduate school in 1982. It was clear, wow, that looks like a pretty smart thing to go into because even if you're just pretty average, if it's going to grow 100% a year on a compound annual basis for 30 years, you're probably going to do it. And the lovely thing about Wilmington is that despite some of the leadership or lack of leadership in economic development, we have some of our schools particularly well positioned for this clean tech opportunity. Most notably, Cape Fear Community College. I think last I looked, I brought up their curriculum. They had about 16 courses. Did I hear one of the professors is here from?
Yeah, hi.
Was that roughly the number? I thought I saw like a 12.
We have a whole curriculum program. I'm the lead instructor. It's called Sustainability Technologies.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
And it's 75 hours. 15 hours of those are general education, but 60 roughly are in alternative energy, efficiency, green building, various issues, topics, and sort of more of some broad scope stuff too.
So that's exactly my point. Now you tie that into the entrepreneurship at UNCW and the Marine Science Center, from where there's some remarkable now with the doctorate degree in marine science, where some of the opportunities there around clean tech. It's really, we have a very compelling story to tell when folks are ready to tell it. And this is all, again, around establishing a relevant economic identity that does allow us to be competitive and make a mark. Part of that is your legitimacy in attracting the talent, the ideas and the capital that's moving around the world, like 24/7 in this day and age. It's not a plodding thing where it's done, well, this is how it was done 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. It's very different now, and we have to figure out a way to attract all that motion, because we know this is a very appealing place. We've seen a lot of people land here because of their attraction to the place, and so we want to make sure we understand what that sort of bottle up and harness it, while preserving our coastal place-oriented assets, which is the big draw. And one of the neat things about the clean tech sector here would be we have enough industry, we have enough residential and retail spread that we could solve some of the region's own problems and make us more competitive by adopting, being an early adopter or a test bed, if you will, for this very clean tech technologies, all the different variations thereof. And one of the things that I think we need to do a much better job of is connect to that triangle brand. So oftentimes you hear, well, who's Wilmington? What's our identity? And Research Triangle Park, they're the R&D center, they're the technology guys. And I would say, well, the sun rises on the triangle in Wilmington. We're part of the triangle. Let's start talking. And just kind of, embrace a global brand that's been well established and was the right brand for the state, and certainly to be 2 hours out. Now, I never worked in Silicon Valley, but I only worked for Silicon Valley companies for 20 years. And I can assure you, Silicon Valley is not a physical place. It's an idea. And it's a mythical place. And that's important because it allows people to say, well, we're in Silicon Valley, and it moves to the west. And then, no, we're in Silicon Valley, and it moves to the east, and it goes north, and it goes south. And right now, if you ask a lot of people, well, where's Silicon Valley? Well, it all depends who you're asking. That's a mythical place. And so should be the triangle, and so should we be part of the triangle and work hard to connect in. And, for example, well, you don't have an engineering school in Wilmington. Well, they got great engineers in Triangle. Wouldn't you think they'd rather work here if they could? And what if we started to brand ourselves a little bit better? So that's kind of important stuff to start off with, because that's essential in doing the next step. Because the capital usually likes to invest local. Venture capitalists historically will limit their investment to the state that they're operating in. Now, there's some exceptions. Global private equity funds are playing an active role now in clean tech investments. I'm going to talk about some specifics. And finally, I think we all touched on it. There is a public sector role in making investments that are complementary and almost foundational to any emerging industry. For instance, the internet. DARPANET, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, the building that network of connecting disparate geographical sites throughout the United States military around the world was the first, let's call it 1.0 of what now became the commercial internet. And historically, the federal government made additional investments to shore up, the openness of the net and so forth. And some of the standards were essential in its ubiquitous adoption. And so I think we're going to have to see that occur probably in clean tech, because a lot of energy tonight has been talking about renewable energy production, but you've got that grid issue, right? The delivery, that last mile we call that, right? Delivering the energy into the home, the retail business, the commercial, the big industrial plant, the military base, right? So those are some of the things I think that will have to take place by public sector, but clearly the innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship that's in all of us is going to be a driving force behind the success of making the United States a winner in this really compelling space. Recently, I've started to do some direct reach out because of my past in the IT industry. Kleiner Perkins Caulfield & Byers, I don't know if everyone knows, but that's the largest venture capital firm in the United States. And I mean, you probably couldn't name a company that they didn't have a hand in. Amazon and Netscape, and they did in 1996 invest in my rather trivial company called Active Software. A fellow by the name of Kevin Compton was the lead investor in that thing, and they had just at that time put together a Java fund. And Java, of course, the programming language Java, And their idea was, well, we're going to invest in companies that are using Java as the fundamental programming language for the applications or the solutions they're building. Well, what's interesting is today they have a Cleantech fund. And I think, who was it, Shar mentioned Vinod from, who's the investor. He's the big guy running the Cleantech fund for Kleiner. And I've been in recent talks with them, and and they've placed some bets. Some people, you may pick up a paper and say, well, now the venture capital community is a little gun shy about Cleantech, and that's not really true. It's just a lot of them. See, there hasn't been that strategic investment by the public sector in let's say that standard or that the internet equivalent. And I think that's a concern about the kind of wide-scale adoption that the private sector investor needs to have their investment, pay the multiple in a reasonable period of time, so that they can have an exit or which would be an IPO or a sale. Now, most of the exits that are occurring, and there have been some, and they've been exciting, have gone along the larger companies acquiring technology to enter the market or to accelerate their entrance into the market, because they're starting to see viability and price performance that's legitimate. Deutsche Bank, Global Asset Management. Deutsche Bank is, I think, the largest merchant bank in the world, and it's a bank that does a whole bunch of different things. But the Global Asset Management Group of Deutsche Bank is the largest asset management group in the world. It's headed by a guy by the name of Kevin Parker, who, ironically, was a high school classmate. And Kevin and I have been friends for a long time. He actually famously opened the first organic vineyard in the south of France, and he did that about 10 years ago, and I actually went to the opening thanks to I was based in New York City at the time. It was just really fun what he did. But he is a big believer in this, and I actually shared with Boyd some of the congressional testimony he's done, and he is really one of the go-to guys in the private sector funding world in terms of the importance of this sector, and he's been advising Congress and everything else about what he's seeing. And I think they're up to a $7 billion spend right now in clean tech investments and growing all the time. One of their sub-partners is Green Partners, LLC, and this Agri Capital is got 40 biogas plants in Germany alone. So when you talk about where the United States is relative to the rest of the world, we are a laggard, and the other nations around the world are much ahead of the United States in terms of their go-to-market, their embrace, and there's a whole bunch of big reasons why it's complicated and a lot of history involved in why that's true. But clearly, you can just feel it that we know as a nation we're at a tipping point. It's kooky what's going on, and with the when you see, for instance, all of a sudden we're now involved in this military action in Libya, and it's why. It's oil. And so when the oil industry is very upset, of course, about these incentives being applied to renewable energies, because they say, well, don't give them incentives, you don't give us incentives. And I would say, well, I think we pay a pretty big tax and a big incentive to the oil companies in the form of human life, and the billions and trillions of dollars our military and sent all those kids over there die over the last 11 years. That's been going on for decades and decades. Clean tech economics, now we're going to talk a little bit about priorities. Priority is not from my point of view, but priority is what seems to be either the low-hanging fruit, and therefore it's a priority. But I mean, that's the easiest action to capture. And so energy efficiency. Some folks have talked about that. That's a huge opportunity. Places when energy is expensive, you see energy efficiency measures take place. We are a very wasteful country. Whether it's the use of it, like I went to Costa Rica over Christmas. Let me give this example. Stayed in a lovely hotel, and if you haven't been to Costa Rica, but you may picture a different experience. But lovely resort, right? But when you left the room, all the power went off. When the door closes, and you open your door and you close it, it's off. The only way it goes on, zip, you take your key and you slide through this thing, and then power goes on. So you couldn't leave a room in your house, for example, without the power going off, and that's just kind of what is reality in a lot of places around the world.